Here we go with round 3 of the Townsville Challenge. Round 1 of the National Grand Prix circuit for 18-foot skiffs. And getting ready for the start. And that anchor line is going to be a worry there. Ella Bachet down the leeward end in clear air. Prudential, the only boat with rig 2, suffering from power already.
Ella Bachet had a dream start, got across the line at the start boat end, had clear air, and already Prudential in strife. Crikey, what a rotten old series this is turning out to be for the team on board Prudential. Dave Cummins doing his utmost at the helm, but she just seems like as slow as an old dog. And Queensland Events very nearly cleans up Prima Drinks and gives Cruising Rangoon Restaurant a little nudge at the rear end there as well. So things are happening very early in this race, but not really happening for the Prudential skiff. She's going out to the right-hand side straight away. Up ahead in the distance, we've got Ella Bachet going great guns, as well as Bank of New Zealand and Xerox.
Yes, certainly Xerox, Bank New Zealand and Ella Bachet all have clear air and have a clear passage out to the ley line. Prudential having to tack away. It wasn't through choice, they were in dirty air. This boat not performing all that well. Rob Brown will be watching on and wondering what he has to do. Ella Bachet sailing well there, the only female skipper, Adrian Carlin, sailing her boat very well with Craig Ramsden and the United Kingdom Olympic representative, Neil McDonald in the bow.
I should say that Scott Ramsden in Bank of New Zealand here doesn't seem to have that advantage he had yesterday over Xerox. In fact, as we watch these two skiffs pounding it out in the very early stages of this third heat, looking at this stage as though perhaps Xerox has got that slight pace advantage back again. Prima Drinks had a pretty ordinary start down the bottom end of the course and is well down below these skiffs. Coming into picture now is Prima Drinks, so not sailing as high. Attack happening on board Bank of New Zealand. Obviously felt she wasn't going so well against Xerox, so she's tacked away, headed out towards the right-hand side. Yeah, well, the breeze is a little bit stronger than in the last race. And remember, in the stronger breeze, Xerox sailing very well. The Bank tacking away, heading for the right-hand side of the course. Xerox keep going out to the ley line, as does Prima. Prima not too bad in speed, but a shocking start. They got a lot to make up. So the fleet has separated. We have this skiff, Prima Drinks, along with Xerox, heading out to the left-hand side of the course. Already going out to the right-hand side are Prudential and Bank of New Zealand. They will separate and be separate for some minutes. Then they'll both tack and come back across. Here's Bank of New Zealand heading out in the other direction. Wind coming across her right-hand side. Skipper Scott Ramsden making an adjustment. On board Prima Drinks, forward hand, Matt Pearce looking up to see whether or not they've made the... what's this? Hello, we've got an incident on board the Skilled Engineering. She stopped absolutely dead in the water there. I cannot see what's happened. Maybe they've run on a mud bank there, Warwick. I'm not sure what's going on. Well, they've certainly run over something because they're not going anywhere, and that's their races. Over for the day. But David Lamont pushing the Prima Drinks through the water. This boat should be a very quick boat, but he hasn't performed all that well. Ella Bachet crossing a front, clearly in front now. Oh, look, it's an anchor line or a mooring of some sort on Skilled Engineering. Prima keeping going out. Ella Bachet, I don't believe, is on the ley line yet. Prima Drinks tacking. David Lamont running through. Boys running out the end of the wing, hooking up on the trapezes, pulling in the sails, out on the end of the wing, and away they go. And charging away at the head of the fleet, Xerox, Phil Barnett crossing Prudential by a long way. Prudential overpowered with that big number 2 rig. She'd come back on the starboard tack. She'd tacked and come back together again with these skiffs who went out earlier, but certainly Xerox in charge of Prudential. Up ahead of Prima Drinks, we saw Ella Bachet, and there we see in white Xerox headed for the top mark and making it. Prima Drinks in orange over behind them and further down as well. And just coming up and crossing in behind Xerox is the red of Prudential. So Xerox back in charge of this race, and also at this point in time back in charge of the Townsville Challenge. Coming around for the first time around the windward mark, pulling the boat away. This is a dangerous time for them. Forward hand starting to run into the boat. Open that big bag to let the spinnaker out. 1,000 square foot of spinnaker. They're getting ready. Going through the final preparations now. Just starting to clean the boat up in there. Good shot. I think perhaps they're undecided again. They're heading across towards that wing mark, and once again they have to try and pick that angle right and make sure they get the angle correct before they set the spinnaker, because if they get it wrong it can prove absolutely disastrous. Warwick, I'm of the opinion that we're perhaps being a little bit unfair on the crew on board Xerox and saying it's all boat speed that's getting there. They seem to be sailing a faultless race, and the crew work is terrific.
Oh, absolutely, Bill. They work long hours, these guys, to get this crew work right. And they've been at it for 3 years now as a combination. Phil Barnett looking over his shoulder, checking out the opposition. And as you said, if they pull this up too early, as Bank New Zealand rounds the mark in second place, powering it up, they're hungry, they want to get Xerox. It's one apiece, one win apiece. And if Bank New Zealand can pull back Xerox, they're going to close the gap. Xerox now powering up. If they pull the spinnaker up too soon and they can't make it around the mark, they're going to drop it again, and that will hand it back to the Bank of New Zealand.
I would have thought in these circumstances that Scott Ramsden had to take the chance with his spinnaker. We see it now happening on board Xerox. There was a fair old gap in there when they didn't fly it, so they're sailing very conservatively. They've got a substantial lead. They don't have to take any risks, and neither they do. But on board Bank of New Zealand, I thought Scott Ramsden may make the decision to set the spinnaker early, take a risk, as Ella Bachet comes round in third position. So Ella Bachet again in front of Prudential.
Yes, and Xerox having a bit of trouble there, having to flag the spinnaker a little bit. The breeze is increasing. And even though Bank is behind, they don't want to make silly mistakes. They've got to think about the job. On board Ella Bachet again. Adrian
Okay, when you're ready, right, pull away. Away we go.
Xerox still struggling to get around the mark.
Trying to make the right decision on board Ella Bachet. Adrian Carlin's problem is that she only weighs 7 stone and she can't hang the amount of weight out the side to let the crew raise that spinnaker as the other crews. It's a much riskier proposition for her. At this point in time, Xerox seems to be carrying okay across to the wing mark. She seems to have timed it quite well. Ella Bachet still yet to make that crucial decision on the spinnaker. Up ahead, the Bank of New Zealand.
And there's not much of a gap there. They've caught up to the Bank. The Bank, you can see the crew's starting to run in now. They're going to go for the spinnaker. Up it goes the mast. Up the mast it goes. You have to pull out the pole. Adrian's hanging on. She's not going to set it straight away. See the forward hand, Neil McDonald. Craig Ramsden runs in. And back on Bank in New Zealand. They've got the spinnaker set. Ella Bachet, a good set from there.
Beautiful set on board Ella Bachet. Neil McDonald and Craig Ramsden, excellent work. That was one of the quickest sets you will ever see on board an 18-foot skiff, and that's just another 4 or 5 seconds they pick up, gets them a little bit closer to the opposition. Xerox around the wing mark and heading back down towards the bottom end of the course. There are their positions. Xerox in white, already around the wing mark. Closing up behind her, in blue, Bank of New Zealand. In pink, Ella Bachet. All skiffs sailing safe and sailing fast.
Yes, Ella Bachet looking very comfortable there. They seem to have set that spinnaker at the right time, a fantastic set. Prudential lagging behind. They're not high enough to get the spinnaker on yet. Dave Cummins stepping in for Rob Brown. Dave Slennett running in, opening the spinnaker bag. You can see that big bag opening there. Fourth place, pulling the spinnaker up the mast and jumping off the deck, pulling it up. Chris Harmson pulling it out to the end of the pole, dives for the spinnaker sheet, pulls it on. A little flag there, not a good set on Prudential, so not a good day for the boys on Prudential. Ella Bachet jibing around now, hot on the heels of the Bank New Zealand. Prima just going for the set now.
And Prima rounding the top mark in 6th position and doing better today, doing a little bit better today. But by golly, on board Prudential, Dave Cummins shifting in, leaving Chris Harmson and Dave Slennett out on the wing, generating as much pressure as they need, carrying number 2 rig. They should fly off the breeze. They've got all that extra sail area, but making no impression.
Yes, and I think poor old Dave, I don't think it's any of his fault. He was second in the Australian titles last year, fought it out with Rob Brown. I think it's purely a boat speed thing. Good jibe. See Chris Harmson pulling that spinnaker around. That was a good jibe there. Handing it out to Dave Slennett. We go in, tidy up the boat, pulling the jib on. Prima has their spinnaker set. But Prudential, they're going to try everything they can to catch up. They're not used to being this far back.
Phil Barnett piloting the Xerox to yet another commanding position as they round the bottom mark after one lap, the halfway point of this 3rd heat of the Townsville Challenge. Scott Ramsden and Bank of New Zealand still hanging on to 2nd position, but that is a full leg of the course that they are now behind. And by golly, Charlie Diekman doing his best to stuff that big snaky old spinnaker in the bag there and doing it tough, but they've got a long way to make up. Ella Bachet hot on the heels of Bank of New Zealand and doing just fine.
Yes,
Up, guys.
on board again with the Ella Bachet.
Okay, coming up on the breeze now. Okay, straight for the next mark.
Adrian Carlin helping her guys get sorted out. Neil McDonald stuffing that spinnaker away. And Ella Bachet is hot on the heels of the Bank New Zealand. The Bank's got about a 30-second gap. Prudential in 4th place, dropping their spinnaker now, and a fantastic drop for the Prudential.
And looking as though Queensland Events is making up some territory on Prima Drinks in the background as well. But Adrian Carland, I was very interested to hear her on board headcam then, Warwick, because that sounded a heck of a lot calmer than most of them do. And I think as we have the headcam rolling through this total circuit over the next few weeks, we're going to find that Adrian Carland is a very calm presence on board her skiff, and that some of the other skippers just get a little bit testy at times.
Yes, and when it gets hard, there's 3 people, you've got to work together. Things don't always work the way you want to, and tempers get a bit frayed sometimes, but Adrian is a cool customer.
A cool customer, not doing all that flash just at the moment. She's sailing much lower than Bank of New Zealand, and the word on these boys. Okay, here she is, the Skilled Engineering, would you believe it? They've picked up a shark hook. Sailing along, ran over a shark line, set here in the bay, out from Townsville, and whammy. The shark hook goes straight through the rudder and stops them dead in the water.
So it's shark for dinner, Bill.
I think it is. Skilled engineering for dinner, I think. This is an incredible thing that the hook could have grabbed them, but that's definitely what's happened. So here are current positions in the race so far. And Xerox continuing to lead, Ella Bachet putting in a great race.
Yes, Prudential, we'll see here with 2nd rig on, struggling a little bit. I think the breeze is lightening at the bottom end of the course. It doesn't seem to be helping them any. There should be. The Bank there still sailing well, a bit lighter crew weight, and as the breeze drops, that should help them. Ella Bachet not sailing very high at all there, going quick but not going in the right direction. Back on board Xerox, and they're doing everything right, but you can see the breeze dying off, the forward end having to get in off the end of the wings sometimes, and that doesn't help. They've got 3rd rig on Xerox, which means they've got the smallest rig. The Bank also has the smallest rig. They have 3 rigs, these boats. Number 1 the biggest, number 2 the intermediate, and number 3 the smallest. So all the boats have number 3 on, which is the smallest, except for Prudential, which has number 2.
And I suspect, Warwick, that that number 2 rig starting to do Prudential some good, although look here, Xerox fully powered up, all 3 crewmen fully extended and generating heaps of power and lots of boat speed. And these pictures coming from cameraman Richard Malone using a Schwemm lens in the chopper and looking just great. Cruising Rangoon Restaurant, the triers of the fleet still in there, but at the back end of the fleet and doing their best.
And from chopper to headcam on Ella Bachet, Craig Ramsden discussing tactics with Adrian Carland, seeing what they can do to catch up the deficit to Bank in New Zealand. And Prudential still got problems, and early in the day I spoke to Rob Brown about what he could do to catch up the speed.
We've got teething problems which will require a good rethink of our rigs. The hull shape's certainly proven itself with Xerox. It's performing above expectation, and mate, it's early days. Look, you know, one race doesn't make a summer, and if they think that we're going to go and hide in a hole somewhere, they've got a lot of things coming to them, because we've put a lot of effort into this boat, and it's just a matter of sorting out the rigs.
Fighting words from Rob Brown, and of course you never get anything but fighting words from him when the chips are down. He did the same thing last season and came back and did a fantastic job, and once again no doubt they'll come back, but certainly problems at the moment. A good race going on here today for Ella Bachet, conditions freshening up a little bit, and Ella Bachet trying their best to get up to Bank of New Zealand and see if they can slip into 2nd position.
Yes, the Bank's sailing very flat, and in fact they're sailing a little bit to weather. Ella Bachet leaned a little bit further over, not quite as flat and sailing quite as well as the Bank in New Zealand. Heading up to the top mark for the 2nd time, Ella Bachet slightly behind the Bank. We can see the Bank New Zealand with the left-hand screen there, probably about a 15-second gap. Sheets are starting to be eased to go around the top mark. Xerox is already around, the Bank coming up, and this is a dangerous time indeed. They've got to be careful going around the top mark, adjusting the bang which controls the big mainsail at the back. Charlie Diekman flicking the big rope off to ease the jib, and around they go.
Xerox the leader in race 3 of the Townsville Challenge, a substantial leader over Bank of New Zealand, now going for the spinnaker set, having rounded the top mark, marginally ahead of Ella Bachet. In 4th position is Prudential and struggling. 5th at this stage is still Prima Drinks, and in 6th position is Queensland Events Skilled Engineering, struggling in 7th.
And there's a problem on board the Bank. They can't get the spinnaker out to the end of the pole. Charlie Diekman having to run out, and that's not normal practice. Around the top mark, Prudential just in front of Ella Bachet, and they've moved in front. They've gone from 4th to 3rd. Ella Bachet moving back. They must have had a problem. And on the screen there, Xerox around coming up to the finish with Bank New Zealand second in blue, Prudential moving up to third in red, and Ella Bachet in pink.
So what a turnaround that is. Xerox doesn't have to worry about any of this drama up behind them, but Ella Bachet had a lead of, a huge lead over Prudential down at the bottom end of the course last time, and in this passage of about 10 minutes from somewhere, Prudential's found some pace and she's rounded this top mark ahead up into third position, and that will be a huge relief to those boys and a huge disappointment to the team on board Ella Bachet.
Yeah, I don't know if it was so much a huge turn of speed from Prudential, Bill. I think Ella Bachet screwed up a bit there because the gap up to the Bank New Zealand has grown immensely. But out front and doing it easily is Xerox, Phil Barnett and his crew, cruising in. Just got to take it easy now, make no major mistakes, and they've got another one in the bag.
Well, still, it's not all over for Ella Bachet. Everyone still has to try and decide when they're going to set those spinnakers, and the timing of that set can still leave Ella Bachet in with a chance. And indeed, as we speak, in goes Ella Bachet. Craig Ramsden goes in. Neil McDonald gets set to release it, trying to release it. She's held up. Oh, and a spectator wash comes across and nearly knocks them rotten. Now the spinnaker going up the mast, and they're going earlier than Prudential, which gives them half a chance.
Yes, but Craig was waiting for Neil then. There was some problem getting it, that bag released, but once they got it, there's another problem. Ella Bachet in all sorts of strife. Craig Ramsden looking up the mast, Neil McDonald is. Something has gone wrong. It's caught around the spreader there, Bill, and that's not going to help them. It's coming down, the halyards down, they're going to try and release it. Boat's starting to fall in backwards. This is a dangerous time. They might have to drive the boat to get it clear. Dave Cummins looks over his shoulder. He says, they're in trouble, let's take it easy. But no such trouble with Prudential. The spinnaker is filling and the boat is flying. Ella Bachet still in trouble. They've got to watch it because the boat could capsize very easily as they try to sort out their problems.
They've gone from being clear third to being fourth and in all sorts of bother. So we'll keep an eye on the drama on board Ella Bachet as Prudential steams off down the track in now clear third position. And Neil McDonald, what a puzzle it must be when you look up the mast and you can't figure out where the heck that thing's tangled up.
Well, it's not so much they can't work it out, but they're just frustrated and they've got to try and clear it. I mean, having to pull that sail around the windward side again and get it down, I mean, it all takes time and they're just going out the back door. Xerox very comfortable, got their spinnaker down. Phil Barnett going out in the wire there. Back on Prudential, Dave Cummins looks over his shoulder.
Xerox very comfortable indeed. We just saw that Prudential was in fact approaching that wing mark, and here's Xerox now heading across towards the finish line from the bottom mark. She's got that huge lead again, boat speed, rocket ship. Prudential going through the jibe, and even with number 2 rig coming downwind, she's struggling to get up to the Bank of New Zealand, and despite the fact that that boat speed's gone missing, the excellent crew work from these people has got them back up into third position.
Yes, but we keep talking about the boat speed of Xerox, and they certainly do have it as they go across the line to win Heat 3. Boys congratulating each other. It's been a fine win. But just on that, Bill, the crew work on Xerox gets them there too. And the boys interlocking their feet there so they don't get pulled off the wings. Prudential got the hammer down, trying to catch the Bank in New Zealand. I think the gap's too far. Unless Bank makes a mistake, Prudential is in third. Dave Cummins there just talking to his tactician, Chris Harmson. And on Bank New Zealand, Charlie Deepman gathering up that big 1,000 square foot coloured spinnaker, putting it in the bag. Cameron McDonald with the main sheet in his hand, controlling the back sail, starting to pull it on to go up to the line. And the boys on Prudential going in for the drop, Dave Slennett. And on board Bank New Zealand going up to the finishing line. They'll secure second place, Bill.
An excellent performance from Bank of New Zealand. I must say, I think Prudential have done well. The crew have done well. The boat speed wasn't there as Bank of New Zealand crosses the line in second position. Prudential is third and Ella Bachet is fourth. And that was a tough one for Ella Bachet. More tough, though, for the skilled engineering. She found a shark hook about 10% into the race. She ran across a set line and found a shark hook. Progress points show that she hasn't done very well as a result of that in this series, but Xerox has done great. But the skilled engineering was the amazing story of the day. They crossed a set line and Andrew Devola back on shore was pretty amazed about it all.
There's a couple of marker buoys out there that we've been wondering what they were all week, and today we finally found out they're shark baits, and we were going along with a bit of pace and suddenly we came to a screaming halt, and we realised that we had it tangled round the fins, and Jeremy, my sheet hand, he jumped off the back to try and untangle it, and he said, "You're not going to believe this, but there's a shark hook through the rudder." I think we were just lucky there wasn't a shark on the end of the hook.
After 15 years sailing 18-foot skiffs, Phil Barnett now has the opportunity to become the dominator he's always wanted to be. He's won 2 races out of 3 up here in Townsville. Bank of New Zealand, I think, is the only skiff with a real chance of beating him, so we'll see what happens when we resume tomorrow.